Hey there guys, I'm Will and welcome to the FP1 Fan Podcast, episode 2 today, and this is of course the podcast that you yourselves can get involved in, and if you do want to end up on the show, just drop me a DM on Twitter, it's at WillL2000, send me a topic that you want to talk about, and yeah, we can go from there. But today's guest is a very exciting one, another fellow F1 YouTuber, absolutely privileged today to be joined by Jeb from Jeb Motorsport. Jeb, how are you? How's your lockdown been so far?
I'm good, thanks, Will. Just getting by. How about you?
Yeah, no, I'm really good. Pushing on with the YouTube stuff at the moment. It's been good fun. I'm missing the racing though, and I'm looking forward to that coming back in just over a month's time. So yeah, how are you feeling about Austria and the season starting in July?
Of course, July 5th, it's a date in all of our calendars. It's a really exciting time considering we've all missed Formula One so much over the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm just hoping it goes ahead, honestly.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It's looking like it's closer to being guaranteed now. I think obviously the government have kind of signed it off, and same thing with Silverstone as well. So it's going to be good to have the British Grand Prix on this year and 2 rounds of it as well. But that's what we're here to talk about today. We are sat talking about the Red Bull driver program. Now, of course, this could be considered one of the most successful driver programs in the history of Formula One. Obviously, you've got success stories like Daniel Ricciardo, Max Verstappen, Sebastian Vettel, and of course the driving god Christian Klein. We can't forget about him. So yeah, there's obviously nowadays though that hasn't really got the edge to it. Obviously you've got Williams starting their own academy now. I put a video on that earlier in the week. You've got Ferrari with a very, very, very interesting driver academy with the likes of Mick Schumacher and Robert Schwartzman. Renault have got a few solid drivers in there as well. So there's 10 drivers currently in the Red Bull program. What's, I guess, your current view on that program and how it stacks up with the rest of the junior programs on the grid?
Well, in my opinion, the Red Bull Junior program is probably the strongest alongside Ferrari's driver academy. And there's a couple of drivers from each academy that I could see going to Formula One in the next couple of years, given the right training.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, there are some very strong candidates in there at the moment. We're going to start with Super Formula. Now, there's 2 Red Bull juniors that are going to be starting in Super Formula this year. You've got Sergio Sette Camara, who made a brief appearance in the series back in 2016, but is now coming back 4 years later. And then Yuri Vips, who I think did a few races in the back end of 2019, but will be hopefully contesting a full season this year. Now, go back to last year, and the junior driver we had starting in Super Formula was Daniel Ticktum, and that didn't really go to plan, if that's one way of putting it. What are your opinions, I guess, on these 2 drivers to start with, and their possible progression in the series, and maybe even up to Formula One?
Well, I think Sergio Sette Camara has let's say, the closest possibility to winning a championship, seeing as he's already had experience in similar cars in Formula 2, whereas Vips is going to be coming straight in from Formula 3. So he's going to have a lot of seasons to learn the ropes of a much, much faster car. But I'm confident that he can do it.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, Camara, he's tested in Formula 2. He's had a fairly successful Formula 2 season as well. 19 podiums, 4 poles, 4 wins and 4 fastest laps. So that's not bad. 2019 was also his best finish in that series, finishing 4th with Dams. So yeah, I think you're right. He's definitely in a very strong position coming into Super Formula. That said, yeah, we said that about Dan Ticktum last year, so you never know. Super Formula is a massive step up, and you know we've seen it make or break drivers. So was it? I want to say Pierre Gasly. That was it. Pierre Gasly went into that series and did very, very well. And that kind of helped push him up into that Toro Rosso drive, where he's obviously fluctuated a bit since then, but. Yeah, it's a very good series for really testing that talent. There's a few kind of XF1 drivers in there as well. I believe Kobayashi's in there, Nakajima as well. So he's up against the best here, and it's an incredibly exciting series as well. If you've not seen Super Formula, I definitely recommend checking it out. Obviously, Vips although making that step up from Formula 3, so you could argue the same, I guess, path that Daniel Ticktum took. What does he need to do you think, to, I guess, avoid the same mistakes that Dan Ticktum made?
Well, I think the key for Yuri Vips is not getting too far ahead of himself, not, trying to challenge for podiums and wins in his first year. I think he wants some solid points finishes, finishing races, not taking too many risks, establishing himself as a solid rookie driver in his first season to make sure teams look at him and go, well, he's an interesting prospect for next year. Keep him in Super Formula because it's a very good feeder series to Formula One.
Yeah, indeed. And, Vips, he was obviously in, I believe it was Formula 3, wasn't it, last year? And, yeah, he did very, very well in that. And he was looking like one of those standout talents. And for a time, that top Red Bull Junior. Now they've signed, Jehan Deruva and Yuki Tsunoda made quite a big impression towards the back end of that year that maybe makes him, I guess, a step up above Vips. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised not to see Vips in Formula 2. I guess, can you see the reasoning behind them putting him in Super Formula and not kind of progressing him alongside the likes of Tsunoda?
Well, there's many reasons for this. The first is that Tsunoda is part of the Honda Dream project, of course. He's going to be the first Japanese driver in F1, they hope, since Kobayashi left at the end of 2014. So they're pushing him through the traditional route. And I'm assuming that Vips didn't want to be congested in Formula 2 alongside the likes of Christian Lundgaard, Guan Yu Zhu, and Marcus Armstrong. So he's taken a different path, and time will tell whether that works for him or not.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Talking about Formula 2 then, obviously we've spoke about Tsunoda already, and you're right, he is not just a member of that Red Bull driver program, but also very well affiliated with Honda. And as Honda seem to be ramping up their support, I guess, of that Red Bull team, and I think especially since leaving McLaren, their I guess foundations, I guess you could say, in the championship are a little bit more strong. I think as that McLaren relationship kind of faltered, I guess I could say at the end, but really throughout the entire time as those guys were partners, there was always that worry that Honda would just pull out. But now they're with Red Bull, now they appear to be succeeding with Red Bull, it's definitely looking a lot more positive for that team. Now, Tsunoda, I'll picture it to you this way. Let's say Vips and Tsunoda do equally well in their respective seasons. Who do you think's going to get the drive, Vips or Tsunoda?
I think Tsunoda, purely on the quality of his Honda sponsorship, for lack of a better word. Honda are really, really pushing for a Japanese driver in Formula One. And I think if Tsunoda and Vips do equally well, it'll come down to the Honda project that pushes Tsunoda through.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing to look at, Formula 2, it's going to be quite a feisty season this year. You've got, the returning drivers, the likes of Mick Schumacher, Jack Aitken, Callum Ilott, Luca Giotto, and at the same time, you've got Tsunoda coming in, fellow Red Bull Junior, who we'll get onto in a minute, Jehan Deruva, who's incredibly exciting, Robert Schwartzman, who I think is a really underrated talent and someone who I think could possibly be a surprise contender for the championship, and many more, So I think Christian Lundgaard in the Renault Driver Academy is another example. So there's a lot of big names in that Formula 2 championship this year. And obviously Formula 2, it's got a little bit more of a presence, I guess, in the current motorsport world than, say, Super Formula has. So the pressure is definitely going to be on Tsunoda. He's going to be on the world stage. He's going to be on the support cards for the Formula 1 Grand Prix. Do you think he can, I guess, amount to that pressure and not buckle like we've seen some drivers do in the past?
I mean, we've seen him in Formula 3, and he's got some seriously consistent results. Maybe not, world-beating results, but consistent. It's my belief that Tsunoda, he's going to continue this form. Hopefully he'll stay unflappable during his F2 drive, pick up some solid points, maybe a podium or two. He's with Carlin, so, Carlin are a very strong team with a good history in the sport. They'll support him, and I think he'll go far.
Yeah, definitely. So, sticking with Formula 2 then, let's talk about Jehan Deruva. Now, this is a driver who I'm incredibly excited about. So, obviously, he's had a very successful Formula 3 campaign last year. Then signed up to the Red Bull Junior program at the start of 2020. And, again, he's one of those drivers very similar to Schwartzman, who I think could be a surprise contender for a championship. Maybe not this year for Deruva, but definitely give him a year in Formula 1. A year in Formula 2, and he'll definitely start to kind of show his true colours. He really came alive towards the back end of the Formula 3 season last year. So, what's your opinion on Deruva, though?
Well, Deruva, yeah, he's definitely one of those underrated drivers. I mean, he scored 7 podiums in Formula 3 last year. He won only 2 races, but his consistency during this time kept him ahead of his teammate Marcus Armstrong, which many more people thought, Armstrong was a bigger talent. However, his consistency enabled him to stay ahead until the final race of the season. So I think Deruva could be a real dark horse for the Formula 2 championship. Not this year, but like you said, maybe next 2021 or 22.
Yeah, and just looking at his results now, in 6 races in the middle of the season, 5 of which he was on the podium, it shows, like you said, he's got that consistency, and yeah, there is definitely potential in him, and it's someone who he's a very nice driver off track as well, and someone who I think deserves to have that step up into Formula 2, and maybe like you said, in a couple of years into Formula 1, it's a very exciting time for junior drivers. There's a lot of drivers now in Formula 1 that are not just approaching the end of their contracts, but perhaps approaching the end of their careers as well. And we are beginning to see this kind of new, I guess, injection of talent into the sport. If you look at the likes of George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, just in the last few years alone. And, it's a really exciting time for the sport. So if, let's say, Deruva or let's stick with the whole Formula 2, so Deruva and Tsunoda get into Formula 1, how do you think their prospects will be in that series? Obviously, it's a completely different ballgame by that point.
Well, it's very, very difficult to say. Obviously, as we've previously said, Tsunoda will have the Honda backing, but we're not sure how much of the Honda backing is going to bleed over into Red Bull's Formula 1, program. So I'm not sure how much correlation between Honda and AlphaTauri we'll be seeing. However, Deruva has shown himself to be a very consistent driver, and if he performs at the same consistent level, I think he could be a valuable junior for any Formula 1 team, looking to pick up some, lower points results and give him some experience in a Formula 1 car.
Yeah, definitely. If we look at Toro Rosso or AlphaTauri as they are now, they've got Kvyat and they've got Gasly, both drivers that they're good in their own right, but they've both been ditched out of that Red Bull team at some point. And I think we're getting to the point now where, if not this year, but definitely next year, that the team are going to be looking to replace either one or both of those two, and maybe step up this junior talent. Because at the end of the day, that's kind of what the Toro Rosso team is for. I can't see either of those drivers stepping back up to the Red Bull team, because Mateschitz is just not going to back down on that. He's like, I've sacked them for a reason, I'm not going to bring them back, and that's a real shame, really. But really, it's the end of the day, it is what it is. We can't change that. So let's move on then. Formula 3, we've got quite a few drivers in Formula 3 at the moment that are in the Red Bull junior category. We've got Jack Doohan and Liam Lawson, as well as Dennis Hager and Igor Fraga. Let's focus on Doohan and Lawson to begin with. Obviously, I know you're quite a big Lawson fan. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Guilty.
There you go. So I guess let's focus on Lawson first. Talk me through Lawson's career so far, and what you think his prospects might be for the future.
So, Lawson is one of the younger drivers in the Red Bull Junior program. He was born in 2002, so he's only just turned 18. He's had a very successful junior career up to Formula 3. He was the first youngest winner of the New Zealand Formula First Championship. He took 5 wins in the Australian Formula 4 Championship to claim the championship as his rookie season. He went to the German Formula 4 Championship and got 3 wins, 3 pole positions, and he was second place in the championship. Obviously, he's won the Toyota Racing Series and lost it recently to Igor Fraga. But in Euro Formula, he did quite well. Sorry, not Euro Formula, in Formula 3. He joined FP Motorsport, and despite his inexperience in the car, he claimed 2 sprint race podiums at Silverstone and at Monza, and he was 11th in the championship overall.
Yeah, fantastic. And, I think that's the first time I came across Liam Lawson. It was in that Formula 3 season last year, and I think the first time he kind of came to my light was his fantastic drive in the sprint race in Silverstone, where he finished 3rd, and I was like, you know what, this could be a Red Bull Junior for the future. They don't want to drop him. I guess always the kind of worry with these Red Bull Juniors, especially when they hit the kind of Formula 3 period, it's where Red Bull really start to look at their performances and think, okay, are you going to really be a success story for us or not? We've seen drivers in the past. Nico Kari, I think, is perhaps the biggest example. He's kind of fallen off the grid now, but go back a couple of seasons and he was kind of being bigged up for a possible drive at either Red Bull or Toro Rosso, and then he lost his Red Bull backing, and very quickly, he's kind of fallen off the face of the earth in terms of the motorsport world anyway. So you mentioned Igor Fraga, driver that obviously beat Lawson in the Toyota Racing Series. Was it this year, wasn't it? I think?
Yeah, this year.
Yeah. What's your opinion on Fraga then?
Well, Fraga, of course, is much older. He's got nearly 4 years more experience in racing. He was the FIA Gran Turismo Nations Cup winner in esports. He's also competed in, Brazilian regional championships. So I think, he's older than most Red Bull juniors, but he's doing very well to build his single-seater career, and he could be a possible, real, contender in Formula 2 if he does well in Formula 3. He's a good fallback driver, if you know what I mean, for Red Bull. He's reasonably consistent. He's got lots of experience, and if he does well, maybe we'll see him in a Formula 2 drive.
Yeah, definitely. I think Formula 2 is definitely going to be the next step up for him. And I'm just looking at his career summary now, and it is fascinating. Of all of the series he's taken part in and taken a full part in anyway, where he's attempted every single race, he's only finished outside the top 3 once, which is staggering, So third in prop car racing 2015, first a couple of years later, second in the Formula 4 Championship as well, the between 2017 and 2018. Third again in the Formula Regional Championship, and as you said, first in the Toyota Racing Series this year. So he's definitely someone to watch the future, and someone whose name I haven't really heard much about, at least in the last year anyway. But I think he's obviously in Formula 3 this year. Again, going to be on the world stage, a lot more pressure than normal. It will really be clear to see, I guess, whether he can rise to that challenge and really make himself stand out. That Formula 3, I guess, group in terms of the Red Bull Juniors is very, very popular at the moment. Obviously, you've got the likes of Lawson, Jack Doohan, and Dennis Hager, who we'll get onto in a minute as well. It's very, very competitive, and we get, like I said earlier, we're getting to the stage where Red Bull are going to start kind of filtering these drivers down and letting go the drivers who they don't think are going to make it. So this is really where he's got to perform and got to show his talents. Now, like I said, the other 2 drivers, Dennis Hager and Jack Doohan. What's your opinion on those 2? Do you think?
Well, Dennis, obviously, he was an incredibly dominant contender in Italian Formula 4. He drove incredibly well. He scored 12 victories. That's, it's staggering for someone so young. He's 17 years old and he's got 12 victories in a national racing series. So, he's definitely not quite as experienced in these cars as Lawson or Fraga, but Red Bull are gonna want to keep tabs on him, keep him in Euro Formula or Formula 3, and just keep him under wraps, see how he does. Hope he finishes consistently. He's had an excellent career so far, so hopefully he can build on that.
Of course, and like Fraga, it's his first season in Formula 3 this year, and like I said, the pressure's going to be on. Jack Doohan, then, what's your opinion on him?
Jack Doohan, he's a more difficult sort of fish to pin down, if you know what I mean. There's a lot less information available on him than any others. But of course, he took place in the Formula 4 British Championship. He came 5th with 3 wins there. He was in the Italian Formula 4 Championship in 2018. But of course, he only contested 6 races that season. I think the main reason why he's been brought up to the global Formula 3 series was his excellent performance in the Formula 3 Asian Championship, where he scored 6 wins and 4 poles. 10 podiums, scored 229 points, and finished 2nd in the championship. So, he's definitely not up there quite yet with Lawson, Fraga, other drivers moving into Formula 3. But like Dennis Hager, they'll be keeping him under thumb.
Yeah, definitely. I think, looking back at, his career, I guess the only documented cases start in 2018. He's contested quite a lot of series in that time. But, like you said, they've not really been anything to write home about. Obviously, 5th in British Formula 4, not bad. And then the ADAC Formula 4, only 12th, although he contested 8 races there. I guess, like you said, the Formula 3 Asian Championship, 15 races, 10 of which is on the podium. And for a spec series, that does show that there's at least something to shout home about for doing. And, given the right car and the right team, he can perform. So I think, again, if I was going to have to rank these drivers as to who could get dropped, first, I think Doohan's probably up there. I'm not sure off the top of my head how long he's been affiliated with the Red Bull program. It's been, in fact, I can check this. Okay, since 2018. So he's been around. He's the joint longest in that junior program alongside Dennis Hager and Johnny Edgar, who we're going to get onto in a second. He's at that point where he's got to really, look behind him at the other juniors that might be coming through and who else Red Bull might want to start backing, especially in this kind of Formula 3, Formula 4 kind of region of the FIA World Championship. So, yeah, Doohan, I think he's gone on thin ice. He's got to really perform this year. If he doesn't, he could see the back door, which is a real shame. If he did get that back door, do you think, or in fact, let's suppose it for any of these drivers, let's say if one of them did get the boot from Red Bull, are there any of them that you think could perhaps still make a career, either elsewhere in motorsport, or maybe even still make it to Formula 1?
Well, of course, Hager, Lawson, and Doohan, it's kind of a little too early to tell, if you know what I mean, because all three of them are so young, and we've not really seen them compete internationally at a big scale, apart from, Lawson's brief foray into TRS and Formula 3. So it's hard to say for any of them. I think out of them, Lawson and Hager might have the most, natural talent and experience to be picked up by another team. But Doohan, he's got his father, Mick Doohan, 5-time MotoGP World Championship winner. And maybe that family legacy might count for something.
We've definitely seen that. Yeah, we've definitely seen that with people like Schumacher in the past. As much as he tries to kind of push away from that whole idea that he's only there because of his name, and he's definitely got the talent. Don't get me wrong on that, but you've got to think he's getting a lot of sponsorship deals because he's the son of a 7-time world champion, and that's not his fault. It's something that he can control. But a famous name in motorsport, it's always going to help you get somewhere, whether you're good or not. I think, looking back, people like Bruno Senna, for example, who were okay in Formula 1. Did they deserve to be there if they didn't have Senna as their last name? Probably not. But, hey, it is what it is in life sometimes. Let's move on to, the last category here, Formula 4. We've got a few drivers here. Obviously, the American Jack Crawford, as well as Johnny Edgar. Obviously, these guys are very, very young talents. In this case, Jack Crawford only really came into the Red Bull Driver Academy this year. What's your opinion on these guys? And do you think these guys could really make the step up at this point? Obviously, it's really, really difficult to tell.
Yeah, well, Johnny Edgar comes from a very, very racing focused family. As he says in his little biography here on the website, he's had his grandfather was 1977 British Moto GP champion or something. I can't really. But Uncle Jason was twice British champion and Grand Prix winner. So there were some serious, names in that Edgar family that'll be looking for Johnny Edgar to sort of rank up in a way. He'll be looking to prove himself not only to sponsors, but also to his family as well. He's got that pedigree. But he's had some excellent results, He's won the CIK FIA European Championship in go-karts in 2017. Of course, he's in Formula 4 now, alongside Dennis Hager. But of course, he's still very young. He's only 15. He's still at school. So time will tell whether he manages to balance his family's expectations with that of Red Bull's junior team.
Yeah, makes me feel incredibly old when you say he's only 15, blimey, and he's in Formula 4. Hey, Jack Crawford then, again, someone who there's not much information on. Did you find anything out on him?
I haven't been able to find much on him. Of course, he won some regional titles in America, but he's now driving Formula 4 in Europe. Of course, he's only just turned 15 last month. So, like Edgar, he's very, very young. But I'm not quite sure where the future stands for him yet. It'll kind of be a breakout role for him in Formula 4, as well as Edgar, of course. They'll need to prove themselves. And, maybe we'll see both of them go up to Formula 3 in the near future. But only time will tell, and it's difficult to tell right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think, obviously, the current situation, there's not much we can really tell in terms of results on these guys. Obviously, we'd have expected some of these Formula 4 and Formula 3 seasons to have started already, but obviously, given the COVID crisis, we can't really do that. For me, I think, Jack's making a very significant step. As you said, stepping up from the American series into Europe, it's kind of where things get serious. And, looking back at, say, Daniel Ricciardo, who has talked about, his step up into Europe being one of the biggest steps of his career because, you get noticed a lot quicker, a lot easier. In this case, he's been noticed by Red Bull, so he's going to have some sort of talent behind him. And, you're competing, it's a much more competitive field in Europe than you might be in other parts of the world. So it's going to be very exciting to see how these guys get on. So we've covered the 10 drivers in that list now. I guess my next question to you is, let's focus on next year first and those AlphaTauri seats. What do you think could happen? Let's say, in fact, no, I'm not going to tell you how good or bad these guys might have done. What do you think the chances are of seeing all of these guys in AlphaTauri next year?
Well, as I said before, I'd say Yuki Tsunoda, probably the most likely to get an AlphaTauri seat. If Kvyat decides that, his years in Formula 1 haven't really led to anything, or of course if Red Bull make that decision for him and kick him to the curb. Yuri Vips, it really depends on how well he does in Super Formula. If he doesn't do well, he'll be stuck for another couple of years. But if he does well in Super Formula, he could be an outside prospect for an AlphaTauri seat. With the younger three, of course, they're still in Formula 3, so it's a bit too early to tell. Of them, Lawson and Fraga are obviously, more experienced. They're at the front of that sort of smaller contingent of drivers. But it really does depend on whether these two current AlphaTauri drivers, Gasly and Kvyat, are kicked to the curb. And I'd say Kvyat is probably more likely of the two.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, looking at, well, I guess Toro Rosso's past, there have been times every few years where they've dramatically shaken up their driver lineup. So 2010 was a good example of that. You had Jaime Alguersuari and Sebastian Buemi. Now, obviously, Alguersuari covered a few races back in 2009, but at least this was his first full season in Formula 1. I think, again, in, I want to say 2015, when they hired Verstappen and Verne, I think that was the next time where they completely scrapped with their current drivers and started with a brand new driver lineup. So this, I feel like we're now getting to the point where we are going to see a brand new set of drivers come into that team. I have an idea and just I guess a bit of a gut feeling that if they decide to ditch both drivers, and I think you're right, I think the most likely one to at least go first would be Kvyat, but I feel like Tsunoda's going to be their top priority, but then Deruvala will be their second driver. So if they will have an all-new lineup, I'm going to say Tsunoda and Deruvala, and I just feel like Sete Camara, he's obviously had quite a few seasons in F2 now, but he's never really, I guess, come across as someone who's a really standout talent. He's someone who's very quick, and on a good day can be very quick, but in terms of his overall career, he's never really set the world alight for me. And Yuri Vips, as good as he is, I have a worrying feeling we could see a similar kind of Dan Ticktum situation happen to him. Stepping up from Formula 3 into that Super Formula drive and, being thrust against arguably a more competitive field in that series than you might see in Formula 2 occasionally. So I'm going to take a little bit of a stab in the dark, but say Deruvala and Tsunoda at that AlphaTauri in 2021. But, again, I feel like Gasly might stay on, but I feel like, it might also be a chance of one of those drivers thinking, I'm not going to get in that Red Bull team. Let's look elsewhere. Linking, say, someone like Kvyat with maybe this Aston Martin seat or a driver at Haas, somewhere like that. Or maybe even the driver with Williams if maybe one of them can get the sponsorship money up. So there's obviously several different ways this could go, but definitely there are several drivers in this list that we've talked about that could really set the world alight and make the step into Formula 1 in the next couple of years. Have you got any other lasting comments, Jeb, on this one?
Well, of course, I sort of forgot Sergio Sete Camara, but it's not, like you said, he is a fast driver. He's got a lot of experience, but he's not set the world alight. He's not impressed what he needed to impress in order to secure himself a proper, contender drive in Formula 1. And I think, it might possibly end up the same way for Vips or Deruvala. It really depends on this year for both of them. If they cannot establish themselves, then Red Bull, we've shown that they have very little patience with drivers, like Brendan Hartley, who as soon as he didn't win a race in one season, he was immediately kicked to the curb. So the pressure really is on to perform this year in new series for them.
Yeah, definitely. Now, obviously, as we know, these drivers, if they are booted from the Red Bull program, it's not the end for them. Occasionally, it can be. So I think Nico Kari might be a good example of that. But if you look at people like Alex Albon, who's now back with the Red Bull team, having been booted out of the Red Bull program back in 2012, so yeah, there's always the option back for these guys, and it's never a completely closed door, no matter how firmly Matashit seems to shut it in their faces sometimes. But Jeb, thank you so much for going on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. Do you want to take a couple of minutes just to talk about what you do on your channel and shout your channel out a bit?
So on my channel, of course, I do a little bit of Formula One trivia stories interspersed with little bits of sim racing and gaming content. Obviously, I'm a bit smaller. I'm a smaller YouTuber, but I'm looking to upload, once a week, keep it going. It's a very fun sort of thing to do for me. It's a really great hobby. So, I'm looking to expand upon that as we continue into 2020.
Yeah, you set the goal, was it 140 subscribers or 150 subscribers by the end of the year?
150 is the goal, and we're already at 121. So, we're nearly halfway there.
We can get that then. Guys, go and make sure you subscribe to Jeb. He put a really good video out a while back on the ugliest F1 cars in history. I found that one quite amusing to watch. So, I'll leave a link to that down in the description below so you can check that one out. But yeah, like I said, make sure you leave him a subscriber as well. Really, really good YouTuber and a top-class guy alongside that. But like I said, thank you so much for coming on the channel. I guess the lasting question for everyone watching at the moment is let me know down in the comments below what you think about the current Red Bull driver program and who you think has the strongest driver program on the grid, be that Ferrari or Red Bull or Renault or even Williams. It's completely up to you. Of course, don't forget to leave me a subscribe as well, and don't forget to like the video while you're at it. And yeah, like I say, if you want to show it appear on the podcast, drop me a message on Twitter. But yeah, with that then, hope you have a lovely rest of your week, and I will see you guys in the next one.